My sister tried to steal my boyfriend and attacked me 6 years ago. We haven't spoken since. But at my bridal shower party, my parents invited my estranged sister and tried to force us to make up. My sister, Brielle, and I haven't been on speaking terms for almost 6 years now. It all started with one really terrible incident, but honestly, that was just the grand finale of a lifetime of rivalry. Brielle is 26, and I'm 28, and ever since we were kids, we were in a constant state of war. It's crazy to think about, but our parents never did anything to stop it. They would actually egg us on, encouraging us to compete more. I remember my dad making a big deal out of whose grades were higher. "Let's see who gets the promotion to the A-list this semester," he'd say, and we would just claw our way through homework, all for his praise. Or my mom would talk about our looks. "Kendra has her father's eyes, but Brielle has his smile. Let's see who gets more attention at the family barbecue." It was a constant, low-grade competition that seeped into everything. I feel like if they had nipped it in the bud, maybe things would have been better between us. We might have at least been able to put our differences aside for a little while, but as we got older, we just resented each other more and more. By high school, we barely even spoke. We were like two ships passing in the night, only they were ships with laser cannons aimed at each other. We would argue over the TV remote, over who got to use the car on a Saturday night. Even something as simple as a shared chore chart turned into a battleground. Brielle would accuse me of not pulling my weight, and I would accuse her of doing a half-hearted job. And our parents? They would just watch, sometimes with a look of perverse amusement. "That's just how sisters are," my mom would say, shrugging her shoulders. "It's healthy competition." Healthy? I don't think so. It was toxic. Things got slightly better when I moved out for college. I went to a school about 4 hours away, and the distance was a lifeline. I found my own friends, joined clubs, and finally felt like I could breathe. For the first time, I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what Brielle was up to. I only had to see her when I came back home for holidays, so it was a relief not to have someone hostile around me all the time. I was a young woman, ready to find my own way, and distance was the best thing for us. It was a fresh start for me, but the old rivalries were still bubbling under the surface, just waiting for a reason to boil over. Around the time I was about to graduate, my life was really taking off. I was dating a great guy, Clayton. We had been friends for 3 years in college. He finally got the nerve to ask me out, and I said yes because I was completely smitten. After graduation, we even got an apartment together in the city. It felt natural since we already knew each other so well. I found a great job as a marketing coordinator, and I was so excited to start my career. My salary was decent, and it was a real promotion from the part-time jobs I'd had in college. 3 months into our relationship, I decided it was time to introduce him to my parents. I was so excited to bring him home. He was a keeper, and I wanted my family to see how happy I was. I drove home one weekend, and it was the first time I was bringing a serious boyfriend to meet them. My heart was pounding with a mix of excitement and anxiety. Coincidentally, Brielle was also home for the weekend. I didn't think much of it at first. She was just starting college, and I learned later that she was really struggling to make friends. She hadn't gotten into her first-choice school, and she was feeling pretty down about it. She was coming home almost every weekend because of it. I had no idea about this at the time. All I knew was that we were all in one house together, and it felt like a recipe for disaster. I had a sense of unease creeping up on me as we pulled into the driveway. My life felt perfect, and I knew how my sister would react to that. She'd always been a master at finding the cracks in my happiness and trying to pry them open. And I was right. The moment I introduced Clayton to her, I could see she was not happy at all. She just stood there, sulking in the background. Clayton, being the sweet guy he is, tried to be friendly. "It's nice to meet you, Brielle," he said with a warm smile. She just gave him a cold stare and mumbled something unintelligible. It was the kind of performance that made my skin crawl. She was doing it to get a reaction out of me, and it was working. I just didn't want my boyfriend to see how utterly dysfunctional my family was. As we all sat around in the living room, a thick, uncomfortable silence settled over us. I tried to make small talk, but Brielle kept cutting me off. She'd turn her body towards Clayton, completely ignoring me, and just fire off question after question. "So, what kind of car do you drive?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "Oh, that's a nice one. Do you like fast cars?" Her questions were so pointed, so personal. It was like she was trying to probe for any weakness, any flaw she could exploit. I saw Clayton's eyes dart to mine, a silent question in them. I just gave him a quick, reassuring smile, a silent pact to ignore her childish antics. But then, at dinner, she started to cross a line. She moved her chair closer to his and started leaning in, her hand brushing his arm as she reached for the bread basket. She wasn't even being subtle about it. She started flirting with him right in front of me, her voice dropping to a low, seductive whisper. "You know, my sister has always been so lucky," she said to him, her eyes fixed on his. "She just gets everything she wants, without even trying." The words were a dagger to my heart. It was so obvious she was just doing it to piss me off, to get a reaction. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was just a game. But the fire in my veins was rising fast. It felt like a betrayal. Not just to me, but to my boyfriend and to the sanctity of our relationship. It was a complete lack of respect. And my sister was just laughing on the inside, I could feel it. She was succeeding at her little game. I couldn't control my temper anymore. I felt a hot flash crawl up my neck. I snapped. "Cut it out," I told her, my voice low and tight. "He's my boyfriend, and it's gross that you're throwing yourself at him like this." She just rolled her eyes at me. A classic Brielle move. She went right back to trying to talk to him as if I hadn't said a word. She leaned in even closer, her smile wider, a look of pure mischief in her eyes. My blood ran cold. The audacity. It was almost impressive. "He's a guest," I yelled at her, my voice cracking. "And more importantly, he's my guest, so you need to be more respectful. You're creeping him out." That's when she said something that really struck a nerve. The words cut deeper than any insult she could have thrown at me. "I can tell he deserves better," she said. "And I'm just helping him out by letting him know there are other options than you." She said it with such a cold, calculated tone, it made my stomach churn. My blood was boiling. I started cursing at her, and she cursed right back. It was no longer a quiet dinner party. It was a battlefield, and we were the soldiers. My parents just sat there, frozen, their faces a mixture of shock and resignation. They had seen this movie before, but this was a different level of crazy. This was a movie with real stakes, with a real person I loved caught in the crossfire. My reputation, my relationship, my family's dignity was all on the line. I don't know what came over me, but I had to hit back with the truth. The ugly, honest, brutal truth. "You're just bitter because my life isn't as bad as yours." I screamed. "You're a loser." I saw her face go completely blank. Her eyes narrowed into slits, and a cold, hard look came over her. I knew I had gone too far, but in that moment, I didn't care. The words were out, and I meant every single one of them. What happened next was a blur of motion. It was the moment that would define the next 6 years of our lives. When I called Brielle a loser, something in her just broke. She looked so utterly infuriated, so humiliated, it was like she was a different person entirely. She grabbed my hair across the table. The suddenness of it shocked me so much I couldn't even react. She dragged me to her side and then slapped me senseless. The sound echoed in the silent room. My ears were ringing. My cheek was on fire. I couldn't believe what was happening. We had a code. We never got physical after middle school. But here she was, in a full-blown fit of rage, hitting me with no regard for anyone or anything. That was it. The dam broke. I was so shocked that she had physically attacked me. It turned into a full-blown brawl. We were vicious. We were pulling each other's hair, scratching, and screaming. I was in a daze, but I remember seeing my dad and Clayton trying to get between us. My mom was just standing there, covering her mouth with her hands, her eyes wide with horror. We were like wild animals. I was just trying to defend myself, to get her off me. My hands were tangled in her hair, and I was pulling as hard as I could. I felt a sharp pain in my arm as she clawed at me. The air was filled with our angry screams and the desperate pleas of my parents. By the end of it, both of us were injured and all scratched up, but we were still yelling at each other from across the room. My lungs burned. My throat was hoarse. I felt a stinging sensation on my face and arms, but the emotional pain was so much worse. The humiliation of the entire scene, with my boyfriend and my parents watching us like we were some kind of cheap reality show, was more than I could handle. Clayton was the one to pull me away. He took me outside and into his car, trying to calm me down the whole way back. He was so patient, so understanding, and I was so grateful to have him by my side. He never once judged me or my family. He just listened as I sobbed, telling him how messed up things were. We drove for a while, just in silence, the only sound being my quiet sobs. He pulled over at a rest stop and just held me. "It's okay, Kendra," he said softly. "It's all over now." He was right. It was over. The chapter was closed. I was wrong. That night was the last time I spoke to Brielle. We had fought before, but none of them were ever as nasty as this. It was the last straw for me. I was already living away from her, so I didn't feel obligated to consider her a part of my family anymore. She had shown her true colors. She was not only petty and jealous but also physically violent. I just couldn't have that in my life. The next day, my parents called me. They told me they had talked to Brielle and that she wasn't ready to apologize. They were hoping we could work it out, but I told them I wasn't interested. I wanted things to stay bad between us because I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. They tried to change my mind, but I was firm. I told them this was their doing. They had encouraged our rivalry our whole lives, and now they had no right to be surprised that we wanted nothing to do with each other. They didn't agree with me that day, and we ended up arguing. But a couple of days later, they called me back to apologize for their mistake. It felt a bit pointless at that stage, but I forgave them. I didn't want to lose my relationship with them too. I thought that was the end of it. The chapter was closed. I was wrong. 6 years passed after that incident, and I had no contact with Brielle. My parents stayed in touch with her, and that was fine by me as long as they didn't force me to fix my relationship with her. I saw her at other family events, but we would just avoid each other. It was like we were two strangers in the same room. We didn't even acknowledge each other's existence. Everyone in the family knew we didn't have a good relationship, but they didn't know the specific details. I intended to keep it that way because neither of us came out looking good in that incident. During those 6 years, I focused on my life, my career, and my relationship with Clayton. I got a promotion, and I was making a great salary. We bought a beautiful little house, and we were so excited to start our lives together. We talked about a wedding, about starting a family, about our college fund for our future kids. Everything was just perfect. I was getting married, and I was just so happy. My maid of honor had organized a beautiful bridal shower for me. It was a small party, with just a few close family members and my bridesmaids. My fiancé, Clayton, was also there. We weren't going the traditional route of having only female guests. I wanted all my favorite people there, so the party was perfect. At least, it was supposed to be perfect. For some reason, my parents decided to go out of their way to invite my estranged sister to the event. I don't know what they were thinking. It was so out of left field. When they walked in with Brielle beside them, I was completely shocked. The room went silent. It was a standoff. To my surprise, Brielle looked just as shocked to see me. It felt like a lifetime had passed in those few seconds. The silence was deafening. The air was so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. My parents finally walked up to us. They addressed both of us, talking to us as if we were little kids who had been bickering over a toy. 6 years have passed since that incident, my mom said, her voice soft and hopeful. And a lot of things have changed since then. She went on and on about how we were both so much older and more mature now and that we should just make amends. She made it sound so simple, so easy. It was anything but. I could tell by the look on Brielle's face that our parents had lied to her. They must have told her it was a family gathering or something, not my bridal shower. They had orchestrated this whole thing to force a reconciliation. And it was all happening on a day that was supposed to be just about me and Clayton. I felt a surge of betrayal. They had no right to do this to me. Before Brielle could say anything, I spoke up. You have no right to do this on a day that's important to me, I told my parents, my voice low and steady. Please, leave, I said, along with my sister. I was trying to be dignified and not cause a scene. I didn't want to put a damper on the event. But they just stood there, refusing to leave. My mom just looked at me and said, "Let the past go." Let the past go? My mom's words rubbed me the wrong way. They were making it sound like nothing important had happened, like it would be so easy for me to just let it all go. I had kept this secret for 6 years. I never told anyone the full story, and in that moment, I knew that I had to. I had to set the record straight. I had to let everyone know what really happened. It was the only way they would understand. I took a deep breath. To refresh your memory, I said, my voice cutting through the tension, and to let everyone else know what exactly happened 6 years back, I narrated the entire incident. I laid it all out there. Everything. The way Brielle flirted with Clayton, her saying he deserved better, the way she treated him like he was some kind of prize in a competition he never agreed to be in. And then, I said, my voice getting louder, she was the one who attacked me first. Just because I called her out on her behavior and said that she was a loser. The room was silent. Everyone was just staring at me, their eyes wide. Some of them looked shocked, some looked sympathetic, and some just looked confused. My parents' faces were a mask of horror and disbelief. I kept going. It would have been a different story if I was getting married to somebody else, I said. But I'm getting married to the same guy my sister tried hitting on when I had first brought him home to meet my family, and she had done it shamelessly right in front of me. I told them how traumatizing the whole thing was for me. How she had never once apologized to me for what she did. How she had pretended like nothing ever happened. So you see, I said, looking at my mom and then at my dad. I don't find it necessary for me to forgive her and let the past go. I thought it was more important for me to hold on to the past, so I did not ever let somebody like her back into my life. I told them it was ridiculous for them to show up with her at my bridal shower and expect us to just get along. I was not going to give in. I was not going to be a puppet in their little reconciliation play. My parents were about to argue some more. I could see the words forming on my dad's lips. But thankfully, Brielle came to her senses. She was not happy about being lied to, and I guess she didn't want to hear any more of this either. She just walked out of the room. My mother went after her, probably to pacify her. My father stayed back for a couple of seconds, just staring at me with a disappointed look on his face. I was tired. I was exhausted. I just wanted this to be over. Dad, I said, I don't want to speak to you right now. You really let me down. He started looking pissed off and said that I was being unreasonable. If something happened 6 years ago, he said, it doesn't make sense to keep holding on to it and acting like a brat over it. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was calling me a brat after what his daughter had done. I just told him to leave, and after a couple of minutes, he did. I had to excuse myself for a few minutes to compose myself. I was kind of overwhelmed. My fiancé, Clayton, and my maid of honor were right there for me. They were amazing. They just held me and told me that everything was going to be okay. They didn't say anything about my family. They just let me vent and get it all out. Within a few minutes, I was back to normal, and we resumed the event as if nothing had happened. Everyone else played along, understanding that I needed a distraction. After the shower was done, Clayton and I went back home. We didn't talk about the incident. I just wanted to forget about it, and he respected that. The whole thing happened about 5 days ago. I hadn't heard from my parents since then, and I was fine with it. I thought it was better for us to have some time apart. I didn't even think they were going to contact me anytime soon. I was wrong. This morning, I received a phone call from my mother. I answered it, and she immediately told me that I absolutely had to speak to my aunt, Carol, and make sure that she gave the position she had been talking about to my sister and nobody else. She sounded hysterical and panicked. I had no idea what she was talking about. I had to ask her to back up. She then explained that Brielle had been unemployed for about 6 months now. Her previous company had laid off a lot of employees due to downsizing. A couple of weeks ago, she had run out of money and had to move back in with our parents. She was looking for a new job, but she couldn't find anything she liked that paid well enough. My mother had spoken to my aunt, Carol, about it. Aunt Carol was starting a new business and had decided to hire Brielle as the head of marketing. But after the incident at my bridal shower, my aunt had stopped responding to them and had eventually rescinded the offer. I wasn't surprised at all. Aunt Carol had always been my favorite. My mother forwarded me the message my aunt had sent her, and I thought it was a pretty reasonable excuse. My aunt had said that from what she had gathered from the incident, Brielle had serious anger issues. The fact that she hadn't even apologized for it didn't sit right with my aunt. She had said there was a more qualified candidate for the position whom she had interviewed a few weeks back but had decided to give the job to Brielle because she was family. But she had changed her mind. The job was going to the more qualified candidate. I thought it was completely fair. I was actually pretty glad my aunt had changed her mind because Brielle would have been a nepotism hire. And as someone who has faced the consequences of nepotism in the workplace, I didn't want my aunt to be a part of the problem. So when I read that message, I told my mother I couldn't do anything about it. My mother started losing her mind. She yelled at me, accusing me of sabotaging Brielle on purpose by ruining her reputation. She told me that I had no need to talk about what had happened since I hadn't for so long. My mom said that I actively wanted to portray Brielle as unstable and evil. She said I wanted to seek sympathy from the rest of the family and make myself look like the good guy. Even though it was you, she said, who instigated that fight by calling her a loser, especially when you knew that it would hit her where it hurts. For the record, I had mentioned that I called her a loser. It wasn't like I was hiding anything. But I don't think calling her a name justified how she got physical. And for my mother to claim that I had talked about that incident on purpose to ruin her image was simply just unfair. I felt a surge of anger and frustration. My parents had no right to blame me for this. This was all on Brielle. She was the one who was out of control. She was the one who had physically attacked me. I was just telling the truth. I couldn't take it anymore. I hung up and blocked my parents' numbers. I had no interest in arguing with them anymore. I just couldn't deal with the constant drama and the way they always seemed to take Brielle's side. But after I hung up, I started to feel a bit of doubt creep in. Was I being unreasonable? Was my mom right? Had I really sabotaged my sister? She claimed Brielle was a changed person now, but I hadn't even given her a chance. I felt like I needed to know for sure that I hadn't made a bad move by talking about that incident. It was the only thing I could think about. Was I the villain here? I had a lot on my plate, with the wedding just a couple of weeks away. The last thing I needed was more drama. But with my parents and my sister blocked, they had no other way to contact me, so they decided to visit me. I was just coming home from work, and Clayton and I were about to head out to meet my designer for a last-minute fitting of my wedding dress. They showed up at the absolute wrong time, standing right outside our door. I told them we had to go, but they wouldn't leave. I even threatened to call the cops on them, but they just stood there. I didn't want to call the cops. It felt like an overreaction, but I was at my wit's end. After speaking with Clayton, we decided to just let them in and hear them out. We invited them in and told them to make it quick. I didn't want to keep talking in circles. I just wanted them to get to the point so we could be on our way. My parents came straight to the point. My dad said, "Because of what you did at your shower, Aunt Carol rescinded her job offer to hire your sister. Since this is technically your fault, you have to find a way to make sure she gets a job one way or the other." It was the same argument all over again. I felt my blood pressure rising. I just wanted them to leave. I told them I had already discussed this with my mom on the phone and had nothing more to say. Brielle had a great college education and a solid resume in marketing. She could find a good job. My parents were just making excuses for her. Brielle suddenly interrupted, and it kind of surprised me because that was the first time we had spoken to each other in 6 years. My heart started to pound in my chest. What was she going to say? Was she going to curse me out again? Was this going to turn into another fight? But what she said next completely floored me. Talking about the job offer, she said, her voice shaky, was not the only purpose of the visit. She said the real reason they were here was because of herself. "I feel like I really owe you an apology," she said. "I don't even know what to tell you guys because I'm still not sure about what I felt at that moment." I was so doubtful of her intentions because I obviously don't trust her. So I decided to be very straightforward with her. I asked her if she was only here to apologize because she thought I would be able to help her get the job, or if she genuinely wanted to apologize to me. "Because if you're only here to apologize because you think I can get you the job," I said, my voice cold and hard, "then there's no need for you to waste your breath, because it won't be possible for me." She was a bit surprised by how cutthroat I was, but she managed to tell me that it was only our parents who were here to talk about the job. "I actually came all the way here to apologize," she said. When I looked at my parents, even they seemed surprised. This was clearly not something they had discussed. Brielle didn't seem to care about their shock. She told me she didn't even care about the job. "I'm only here," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "to tell you that I've thought about my behavior towards you for a really long time over these past 6 years, and I always found some excuse not to apologize." She said that after the bridal shower, she could no longer run away from the truth. The truth that she had, in fact, treated me really badly. I could tell by her behavior and tone that she was serious. She was genuinely sorry. It was a completely different person standing in front of me. She told me that she felt like she had to compete for everything right from her childhood, and that had made her very resentful of me. She had spent her entire childhood and teenage years competing with me for absolutely no reason because in the real world, it didn't even matter. Nobody cared. She regretted all of it. She said she could have just as easily been friends with me, since I had tried to be her friend several times. "But I had been the one who rebuffed you," she said, "because I always saw you as competition." It was insane to hear her say all of that because that's exactly how I had felt. I don't want to say it, but I kind of started tearing up when she was sharing that experience. It was just so much to process. I was so used to seeing her as my nemesis, my rival, the person who hated me the most in the world. But here she was, admitting that she was wrong, that she had been jealous and that she regretted everything. Then she addressed Clayton. "I'm also really apologetic for how I behaved with you the first and last time that we interacted," she said. "I got so caught up in trying to beat my sister that I didn't even realize what kind of a disgusting person I had become. She said her apology was long overdue. After she was done talking, she didn't even wait for us to say anything. She just said it wasn't necessary for us to forgive her. I just wanted to get it out of my system, she said. Now that I have, I'm going to let you be on your way. She walked out of our house, leaving me, Clayton, and our parents in absolute shock. We really hadn't seen any of this coming. It was just a couple of minutes later that my parents also left without a word. We headed out for our fitting and didn't even discuss any of it until we came back home. We finally got to talking about Brielle and what she had said. We both thought it was incredibly mature of her to finally apologize, even though it had taken her 6 years to do so. We were inclined towards contacting her later and telling her that we forgave her. I had already unblocked her. I just needed some more time to tell her that it was fine. A couple of days later, I did reach out to her. I told her that I accepted her apology and that I would love for her to be present at my wedding. She graciously accepted my invitation. As for my parents, they hadn't bothered to reach out. I don't think they're sorry about anything, so we're going to continue not speaking to them. I blame my parents for a lot of things, including how the situation turned out between my sister and me. They had a chance to be better parents, but they completely screwed it up. In the past 6 years, we had many fights, but I always tried to forgive them. But now, I can't do that anymore. I can't keep making excuses for people who so clearly don't care about my feelings or even my sister's. They sent me an email saying they wouldn't be attending my wedding because there had been a terrible misunderstanding and we had started villainizing them. They said they had tried their best to be good parents and that we didn't appreciate their presence in our lives. They were just going to take some time away from us. I'm fine with that. Brielle showed up at the wedding, and it was just a really happy day. It's crazy to think that a couple of months ago, if somebody had told me that my parents would not be present at my wedding but my sister would, I would have laughed in their faces. But here we are now. I'm just happy that everything went smoothly, and I'm finally rebuilding my relationship with my sister. Maybe someday my parents will come to their senses and apologize to us. But for now, this is enough for me. My husband and I are leaving for our honeymoon soon, and life has never been better.